This is Ad Infinitum. Ad Infinitum is the award-winning podcast solely focused on audio ads, the creatives who make them and/or the latest thinking that informs them, how the space is evolving, and, my favorite part, a roundup of recent audio ads with analysis by yours truly, Stew Redwine, and each episode's guest. This is Season 3, Episode 14 of Ad Infinitum, titled, This Is My Real Voice. Today, we're going inside the booth with Morning Wire producer Brandon Beville of the Daily Wire to explore what authentic really sounds like in a medium built on authenticity, where conviction, tone, and truth,
you can't handle the truth,
let's call it honesty, drive trust. We'll also grade the latest top movers and shakers in Magellan AI, Parkwiz, Google, Wells Fargo, and LG Electronics, using the Audiolytics framework, and of course, Brandon's grade on those as well. And be sure to get a free demo of Magellan at magellan.ai/ad infinitum. Brandon, thank you so much for joining the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So you've shaved hundreds of reads. I know I've enjoyed them myself. In fact, it was an Ollie read that I'd heard a couple of months back.
Your dog's excitement says it all. That full body tail wag, those happy little hops, that goofy little grin that means dinner's here.
That prompted me to reach out because I was like, this is really good. And it's interesting to me because you're a producer on the show. So before we get into the rest of it, actually, can you tell the chief audio officers who are listening what exactly it is, everything you do over there at the Daily Wire?
Yeah, so I'm a producer on Morning Wire. There's a lot that goes into that other than, reading the ads. That was kind of something that I just stumbled into upon getting the job here. And it was cool because I have a background in TV. And so it's been cool to kind of still do that. I was on camera for a short time, but now I mainly focus on, the content we're putting out and just kind of making sure the production pipeline runs smoothly on Morning Wire. And then, of course, making sure these ads sound great. That's part of it too. But, like today, I looked at maybe we're putting out like 4 interview type episodes this weekend. So I've been kind of watching those several times, making sure they're ready for air and things like that.
That's interesting you say watching them, because it's like that is the world that we live in podcast. And you guys switched over to video somewhat recently, right?
Right. Yeah. Shameless plug here. We are now on video. For a long time when I was on the show, we were audio only, but we recently, I think in April, we added the video element to it. And it's been great. It certainly adds a whole new side to doing this show, adding visuals, things like that, making sure, we're not just sitting on some, John and Georgia, and the reporters sitting there talking, but we also throw up visuals, we do sound bites. It's really it's added a whole new can of worms to our production.
That's wild you say it was April, because I'm like, that was just recently. That's like, just shows you time flies. I'm like, that was 6 months ago.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, because in my mind, I'm like, oh, this recent change. No, I remember talking with some of your team at our Chief Audio Officer Summit over the summer. Now that I think back on it, I was like, I think I said the same thing. You're like, you recently switched to video. But, well, it's funny because I listen to it.
Nice.
Every morning on my dog walk with my main man, my wingman, Maverick. And, every once in a while, there will be something that is like inherently visual or that I'll want to see the visual for. But most of the time, I'm solely listening to it. That's just such a fascinating aspect of how podcasting is evolving, that you have to keep in mind that there are folks that are only listening and then there's folks that are viewing. And it's kind of a side quest, but I do want to go down this because you are a producer on the show.
Right.
How do you think about that? You're creating for a dual audience. You're creating for guys like me that are primarily listening, and you're also creating for people that are watching. Like, how do you guys approach that?
Yeah, it's certainly now something we need to keep in mind, that there are people that are still only listening, a very good amount, I might add. And so it's something we've tried to keep in mind, where if there is something that is very visual, we've started throwing in, lines such as, hey, if you're only listening, there's this great thing, we'll describe it to them, things like that. We'll also kind of, tease it to people too. It's just like, hey, if you want to see John and Georgia's smiling faces, we are on video now. We've started putting that at the end of our show just to kind of drive people towards, coming to watch it and seeing that side of it, because it really has turned out to be a great product that we're putting out visually. And so we're really kind of trying to drive people to watch that, but also maintain that balance that, hey, this is an audio show. It was an audio show for several years before. And so it is definitely a balancing act.
Yeah, I have noticed that at the end of the episode. So well done with that, where you're saying, hey, if you want to see everybody, you can also watch it. And like I said, what I'm noticing is I am watching a little bit more and more. So that is definitely the space that everybody's in. And there's a special episode of Ad Infinitum that's going to be coming out where we're comparing the history of radio with kind of the present and the future of podcasting. That was something that all the all the networks had to navigate this. All the networks were radio networks.
Right.
Because there was no television.
Totally.
So this has been done before. So good luck with that as you guys continue to do that. And I think it's interesting. So you had a background in TV and...
Yeah, and actually audio too. You mentioned audio. Like I went to college for like music and audio production. I ended up in TV, but like, my background is in audio and I mean TV for sure. But yeah, I started out at a small little, TV station in northern Maine. I could see Canada from my apartment at one point. But yeah, I went to school for audio production. And so that's kind of one sort of avenue that kind of goes into this with doing these ads and such. I would do a lot of them in school for projects and such. And then when I got to that small little TV station in northern Maine, there were a lot of, overlap as to the roles that I would do. I was on camera for a time. I was a reporter. I was a producer. And there were times where I would voice things as well. So that was certainly a big part of where my roots in this, voiceover stuff comes from, is that and college and things like that.
So let's talk about before we get into how you approach doing those reads, which you do a great job. And I'm actually going to, I want to grade one of your reads later with Audiolytics. We'll do that. We're going to do it live.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Before we get into that piece, so with the Morning Wire being a news show, like we have talked about, the hosts are more neutral. It's just the communication of the facts. So then you're brought in, the producer voice is brought in where you can voice the ads and give the endorsements. That's currently the way you guys have it set up, right?
Yeah, correct. It's something we might be looking at in the future, where John and Georgia may read some certain ads, but only things that they truly like and will endorse because they enjoy it so much. But that's kind of why they have the producer reads for Morning Wire, is that so John and Georgia can remain relatively neutral because it is more a straight news show as compared to other shows here at the Daily Wire.
Right. And I mean, you do a great job.
Thank you.
Like I said, it was the Ollie spot that got my attention. Of course, I'm also walking my dog. So there you go. Right audience at the right time. And, the real question is, did I sign up for Ollie? Which I did not. I'm sorry. But I can still, as a professional, say that you did a good job. With your background and your experience, how do you approach doing those endorsements?
Yeah, I mean... So for ones like Ollie, I have 2 dogs at home. I have Huskies. I was telling somebody earlier, it's kind of like I have a sled dog team in my living room. And so one thing with Huskies, they're very, very vocal. Mine, maybe not so much, but they can be. And so I had a lot of fun with this one in particular, Ollie, because, I'm like thinking like, man, what do my dogs do when they're hungry? Well, they whine and make all sorts of, husky type screaming noises sometimes and growl and howl at me. And so I was like, how can I kind of use that where it's like, it is still me endorsing it, but it's more like, this is for dogs. We need like a dog endorsement of some sort. And so I try to have like a lot of fun with these types of ads where I like using natural sound, or it goes back to my like news roots, like I love using sound bites from people to help tell the story and natural sounds, explosions, whatever. And so I'm thinking, what would be, something I could use for this particularly. And when it was just like kind of a light bulb moment. When like my dog growled at me at home for dinner time anyway. And so I was kind of like, oh man, this would be great. Those are not actually my dogs in the recording, I should note, but that was kind of where the inspiration came from, was my dog, me getting food, scooping it for him. And then like one of them kind of doing that like, ooh thing at me. And so I was just like, I can totally like make this still my endorsement, but like also my dogs. And so that was kind of where that whole premise of this Ollie ad came from. And there's a few other ones that I've done where I try to incorporate some sound effects of sorts too. It depends on the ad, of course, but this was definitely one I had a lot of fun with.
And what do you look for when you're getting copy points? Like, do you prefer that it's really stripped back and, it's like 5 bullet points and then you've got maximum latitude, or does actually more information give you more latitude? Like, what's ideal for you?
I like having kind of at least a rough script that I can kind of tweak myself and add some of my own flavor to, I guess, rewrite it so it sounds a little bit more like me saying it. And I try to keep those, very authentic, because I was telling somebody earlier, like, we live in a world where there are now AI ads, and there are also people that sound very stiff. And one thing I try to do with both my copy and my performance is just kind of remain authentic so people can relate to it. Like, I'm just an everyday dude telling you about this. It's like, I was talking about this with somebody just with writing scripts for news in general. One of the things that, like, in my earlier career that really, like, struck me as far as how to write a news script is one of my executive producers was just like, okay, well, how would you, like, tell your friends about this over drinks at a bar? And so that was kind of a light bulb moment for me, because I was writing these really, like, big, Latinate words in scripts that just weren't necessary. And it's just like, no, I got to strip it down a little bit and make it like it's very conversational. And so I feel like that's something that kind of reflects in my ad reads as well, and in my copy that I kind of fix up to get the best performance. And so, yeah, I think that's really where my process comes from, is I try to just make it very authentic, very layman's terms, something very conversational, just like as if I was telling my friends about Ollie or some other product over drinks at a bar.
That's funny. A guru that I actually ended up hiring to help with some copywriting early on in my career for some ad writing for this product that I was working on. He would have me read the copy. So I'd read the copy to him. He'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's good. That's good. So what were you trying to say with that? And then I would explain what I was saying in the ad, right? And then he would go, okay, write that instead. Because when I explained it, it's like what you're talking about. It's like when I'm just explaining it and I'm no longer reading the ad, I'm like, well, let me just explain it to a guy. And it's a different way of communicating that you're just like, this is the way I just talk to somebody.
Totally.
And that's what I hear you saying. It's like you figured that out early in your career.
Absolutely. And I mean, a lot of the tone that I bring to, I talk about this all the time, where I got this comment one time about my ad reads, just like in like the Twitter when we post the episode or wherever it was. Maybe it was on Spotify. I don't remember, but it was kind of just like, they described my voice as kind of like a frat guy from Boston. And so I don't take that as an insult. I was like, that's kind of, what I sound like. But that's something that I feel like a lot of people relate to, is the authenticity in somebody's voice. And there's another thing too, like I was in school studying music, and I remember I did this class that was kind of we would do like kind of real projects for real clients. And it was usually an animation with a full audio production behind it too. And I was assigned the music track, and I didn't want the music track. I wanted the sound design track, but I got the music. And I had to do two different music pieces that goes along with this animation. And the one that was almost the winner, I got second place, but it was the one that like had voices in it. The whole thing was about this like transportation system in Oakland, California. I can't remember the name of the company, but it was about this new bus rapid transit. And basically it goes through several different communities in that area. And the thing that really got the company's attention was that I used vocal part in it. There was like a vocal part harmony and like what I guess I would call the chorus. And so I think that if you use your authentic voice in something, it does tend to resonate and hit people a little differently.
It's so funny because it's like I was coming up with titles for this episode, and what I landed on was "This is my real voice," and I didn't even fully appreciate how perfect it was going to be for our conversation, because it's everything you're talking about. It's like there's the voice, there's the sound of our voice, maybe we sound like a Boston frat guy or whatever, and then there's the spirit of it.
Totally.
Right? What we call authenticity, the honesty, I think is what it is. It's honesty.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
And not in the sense of telling a lie or not telling a lie, just coming from the heart, being, it's from Othello, all men should be what they seem.
Right.
And when someone's being real and they're being honest, you can feel it. You can feel it. And, you bring up a good point with the AI voices. That's also kind of like, this is my real voice. Like, I'll be honest, I've got, I don't know how much total time, but like basically every episode of this podcast, so like the last, whatever, it's like 40, 50 episodes.
Right.
I got just my solo tracks, and then I'm editing all those down to upload to 11 Labs, where they've got like their pro version of a clone voice, which now, I mean, it's funny when you go back just 2 years or, like, oh yeah, we need 8 hours of audio.
Right.
Not 11 Labs, but other folks. But anyway, with 11 Labs to do their best clone voice, I think it's 2 hours of your voice, which is a lot.
Totally.
I think I've got 2 hours of me, to make like the most robust clone of myself, which is interesting. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, that was one of the voices that was talked about a whole bunch, I guess, this year or last year, that his podcast, I believe is his podcast. Maybe it was his audiobook,
is like, clone Arnold. And it's just, man, I'd like to hear more what you think about that. I struggle with it because I'm like, there was a point in time in history when people saw photographs and the whole thing about like, oh, it sucks your spirit out, or that's not the real person. But now, like when you and I see a photograph or a television commercial with Kevin Hart endorsing one of the 7,000 products he endorses, we don't have any resistance to that. And yet, to me, there's this heavy resistance to clone voices that's different than photographs. Maybe we're seeing a correlate, something with AI generated video. Like, what do you think that's all about?
I mean, it's pretty insane. I've seen a few times now where, it'll be a really realistic sounding AI voice. And the only way that I know that it's not real is that it's just saying something completely outrageous. Like the Arnold Schwarzenegger thing. I think there's that show when I was a kid, Reading Rainbow, that was on TV. They have like a whole AI Arnold Schwarzenegger singing that I've seen online, which is just, it's hilarious. But, I know that it's AI because there's no way Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to go into a studio and record Reading Rainbow theme song. But it sounds pretty real. And like, I might be getting to a point here where I'm like kind of telling, I'm hearing some sort of artifacts maybe in it. Kind of like, I guess I can compare this to like, I used to not be able to tell when a, vocalist, a singer would be using autotune. But now, after like kind of using it for a number of years, I definitely can tell, and I just know. I can hear those artifacts that it's like, they're using pitch correction, especially if it's really obvious, like Cher, Do You Believe in Love kind of thing. But there's also the ones that's not so obvious. Like, I don't know, it's super interesting, and it's something that I'm watching with great interest because, I think they've even we've got 11 labs here. I've never played around with it with my own voice though. I guess I'm too scared.
Yeah, like I said, like if you've got, there's like their pro level clone, so you could do a clone. But the whole point of this episode, it's your real voice.
Right.
So I don't know. What are we talking about? Yeah, I haven't quite articulated it, but there's something about, like I was saying, like a photograph or video. But now I guess, now that the clone video, the AI video stuff is so sophisticated as well, it's just, like how do you know that something is really real?
Totally.
Anyway, to be real, you got to be real. Okay, so let's really grade one of your ads.
Cool.
We're going to listen to this. This is Ollie by Brandon Beville on Morning Wire.
Your dog's excitement says it all. That full body tail wag, those happy little hops, that goofy little grin that means dinner's here. That's what happens when dogs taste Ollie. Made fresh in U.S. kitchens with human-grade ingredients, Ollie delivers clean nutrition without any fillers or preservatives. Just real food that leads to real results, more energy, shinier coats, better digestion, and genuine mealtime excitement. With 5 protein-packed recipes like fresh beef with sweet potatoes and fresh turkey with blueberries, even picky eaters dive right in. Don't just take my word for it. Here's how my kitchen sounded around mealtime before Ollie. And here's what it sounds like now. Dogs deserve the best, and that means fresh, healthy food. Head to ollie.com/wire, tell them all about your dog, and use code WIRE to get 60% off your welcome kit when you subscribe today. Plus, they offer a happiness guarantee on the first box, so if you're not completely satisfied, you'll get your money back. That's OLLIE.com/wire and enter code WIRE to get 60% off your first box.
Bada boom. All right. So I took the transcript and I ran it through Audiolytics Score, which is the framework that we use to measure audio ads for performance. We've developed it here over the years at Oxford Road. It's a 71-point checklist of 71 different defined subcomponents that roll up into 9 key components in specific order of what is going to make something the most persuasive. And like our target score for all in-market creative is a 90%. And let it be known the Gettysburg Address is Audiolytics approved. It's a persuasive bet. We did an episode of the Media Roundtable. Our founder, Dan Granger, did an episode of the Media Roundtable, our other podcast with T-Pain. And he shared that information with T-Pain. And then he went on to grade T-Pain's lyrics with Audiolytics as well. Speaking of autotune. And that's a guy he's using autotune. Like he's coming right out with it, baby.
He certainly.
Yeah. So anyway, your Ollie ad scored a 90% on the money. So it is Audiolytics approved straight out of the gate. And I knew it when I was listening to it. And I knew I was like, I got to talk to this guy. But like structure and content wise, everything is there. I'm looking at it. I'm like, this is part of why I wanted to talk to you. And you did send some other ads as well. Helix Sleep, Identity Guard, Jeremy's Razors, like all of them, you take the same approach. And we've talked about the approach that you take. So it's like, yeah, this is one of those rare occasions where, you know, I listen to, this is rare on Ad Infinitum that is an ad that's already in market that's at 90% or greater. So
wow.
Yeah, well done on that.
Thank you.
With that said, I do have a note.
Okay.
You ready for my notes?
I'm ready.
From the sound design standpoint, the crickets, what I was thinking of, what I was expecting was...
Yeah.
Did that thought cross your mind?
It did, like, after it aired, and I was just like, maybe that would have been a good idea.
Okay.
Something like that, you know, or like maybe distant crunching of dog food or something with like the, you know, reverberant kitchen.
Yeah, because I just thinking of my dog, like when Maverick goes after it, you know, but I remember, I can't remember if it was Ollie or is Ollie human grade food?
I think it is human grade ingredients, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we were onboarding Dan Bongino, and I can't remember now if it was for Ollie or another one that was like Ollie. I feel like the dog foods things kind of went through the same thing the meal kits did, where there was all of a sudden 24 of them, and then, you know, in the end of the day, only HelloFresh and Blue Apron remain. Now it's like
right.
Ollie and Farmer's Dog. I bet you it was Farmer's Dog.
Farmer's Dog. I've seen commercials.
Yeah, yep. I bet it was Farmer's Dog. And he was like, this stuff is great. I mean, I would eat this stuff. I would totally eat this stuff. I was like, do it. I was like, Dan Bongino, eat that on a live read. Eat
he just starts eating it.
And I was challenging Dan Bongino. I'm like, do it, dude. Do it. You have to do it. He's like, oh, I don't know. I can't. So anyway, that's the next. If you want to take this thing to outer space, bro, eat the Ollie food on the next ad read.
Man, I mean, if they ever make me go on camera, you know what I'm doing first.
Excellent. Yes. Okay. So this is interesting. Like, truly, this is noteworthy. And I hear why. I hear your approach where, like, you clearly understand persuasion and you have a honest approach to communication. What I'm curious about, like, okay, so I just told you this scored 90% in Audiolytics. That's all well and good. Are you aware, did they close the loop, these advertisers, Jeremy's Razors, Identity Guard, Ollie, Helix Sleep? I mean, I imagine the answer is going to be yes on Jeremy's Razors with performance. Like, do you ever get to hear how these perform?
I guess I don't. I guess I don't have great analytics as far as that goes. I usually kind of just, you know, put it out there in the episode and that's that. I guess I don't ever get specific information on how the ads in particular perform, but I would be interested.
I'm sure. I mean, the way I guess you'd keep an eye on it is like who stays as a sponsor and who goes, right?
Okay, I guess that's a good point. Yeah. So I guess a fair amount of people are hanging around. That's for sure.
Well, you do a great job. I'm sure these ads are performing.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, I'm confident. Okay, so now let's hear how all those regular folks out there are performing. And you know what? I want to say one other thing. I think it's interesting too, like your approach, your honesty. I like that word better than authenticity. Your approach, your honesty. Oh, and that you're making the decision, right? Like you're crafting the copy, you're delivering the copy. There aren't a lot of people in the middle. It's not designed by committee, it's designed by brand. Or am I wrong? Is that not the case?
Well, okay. So I'm usually given like a rough copy from our folks in marketing. And then from there is where I'll take it, make tweaks, and then record it. Sometimes I'll ad lib a little bit on the words. There was this whole thing when I was on camera where I would read, you know, the same stories in a news show, like maybe 3 times a day. And then I would get to the point by like the 3rd time where I'm inputting the same information, but I'm outputting something different as far as what I'm saying,
okay,
how I'm delivering the story. And so there's a few times, of course, I'll read through these like a few times to get the best take, but usually by like the, you know, whatever number time, I'm kind of ad-libbing a little bit as well. Whereas it's just like, yeah, I'm reading the script, but something different's coming out. Just saying exactly that thing, but in my own ad-libbed words.
So you're kind of a fan of the Stanley Kubrick approach. Like you're going to do 72 takes. And by the time you get to that 72nd take, it's finally, that's the real deal.
Hopefully like four or 5 takes. Hopefully not 72.
if it is this honesty thing, this honesty kick I'm on, it's like you finally get beaten into a state of reasonableness where you're just like, I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it like it is.
Exactly.
So that's interesting. When it comes to these, so you do multiple Ollie, it's not like you do one, lock it in, and it's done. Like you're going to do the Ollie read multiple times. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I do. I try to get like, and that goes back to kind of like my, honest approach to it, is I try to get it in one go as best I can. There are some times where I might pick up an excerpt and get that in, like, oh, I got it up to this point, or maybe I got it after this point really good. Let's get before that again. But usually I'm just like, I'll just run through it again. And usually I try to just get one solid take where I may only stumble once or twice. And usually I can get that in roughly 3 to 5 takes.
Okay, and you're saying the magic happens on the last take?
Usually, yeah. Or, there's every once in a while, it'll just be like, I really liked the second take, honestly. Like, there's some copy that I'll get that, has kind of the similar parts as it did before. Maybe we're running a new Helix Sleep copy that's a little bit similar, different CTA or something like that. Sometimes I'll change them up. Other times it'll be like, okay, I know this part, let's do it. And I will kind of ad-lib it a little bit, add some of my own flavor to it.
I think that sounds right. I think 3 or 4, that seems like the sweet spot. And like you said, sometimes the magic happens on 1 or 2.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's funny. I met a guy recently. I live up here in Santa Clarita, and there's a lot of like studio guys. And this guy that he's retired now, but it's the first movie he worked on was E.T. So if that gives you an idea.
E.T. phone home.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was like a rigging gaffer. And so he worked in the industry something like 40 years. And I was like, hey, how many takes do most directors do? I was kind of on this same idea, because this is all I do is make things and try to make them better.
Yeah.
And he was like, 3 to 4. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. That's also what you're saying. And it's like, I think about even like making pancakes, right? Like the first pancake you throw out.
Yeah.
Sometimes then the second pancake is like, dang, I nailed it. All right, girls, breakfast is served.
That's a great analogy.
But sometimes the second one, you're still kind of like, oh man, griddle's too hot or whatever.
Right.
And then, God forbid you screw up the third one. You're definitely going to finally get there on the fourth. It's like 3 to 4 times at it. You're either going to have it or you're not at that point in time.
Right.
All
Totally.
right. We solved it. Thanks for listening to Ad Infinitum. No, I'm kidding. Okay. All right. So there's a pro tip, chief audio officers. If you're doing a VO session, 3 to 4 takes is probably and what I've also found, Brandon, is like doing like commercials, like TV commercials, or not necessarily like host reads or whatever, like doing stuff that is more where the perception of more control, where it's like performance with actors, where you're like doing voice actors. I think, and even establishing here, like this idea of 3 to 4 takes, it's like, it's diminishing returns after that. Like you're not going to get anything better. Like you'll go to 9, 10, 11, 12. And then what I've found is I will discipline myself. We don't do as many of those like highly produced spots anymore. But I'll just stop. Like I'll stop it at 5 or 6. Like I'll be like, "You're done. Like get out. Like Stu,
right.
I am cutting you off."
Totally.
And then what happens, I notice, is you go into post and it's there. You just couldn't. You like lost perception in the moment. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. That happens to me too. And there is a certain point that I get to where I'll just be like, well, as good as it's going to get. And then I will kind of find it in post, when we're going through it. And yeah, it's there usually. It's just, you kind of lose sight of that where, maybe some days I just won't be as in the zone and I will like get frustrated and I'm just like, well, as good as it's going to get. And then I go to post and it's like, this is actually good. We just kind of do this, that, and the other thing. And we have it. We have it there.
Yeah, because we'll have people, we did a bunch of founder spots early on. We did like 50 plus founder spots when we were building the agency. And it was like, people would get nervous and stuff. And, sometimes, I'd give them the direction, like, you're not nervous, you're excited. Like all that energy you're feeling, you're excited. Then one time I struck on this idea of like, how when you're drunk, if you've been drunk, have you been drunk? Yeah, I've been drunk. Okay. How when you're drunk and you feel really sexy and cool, but how you look really stupid? I go, like the reverse of that is happening right now. You feel really nervous and awful, but all of us looking at you, you look confident and in command. And they're like, oh, well, I just go, wow, And maybe that's not totally true. Maybe they did look nervous. But a lot of times I find that people's interior state does not match at all what everybody else is perceiving, right?
Right. Totally.
So yeah, I like that. That's another good one, chief audio officers, is fix it in post. No, I'm kidding. No, you know what it does make me think of though? I do think that that's a great example. Like, let's say you did that. Let's say Brandon's doing an ad read. He gets to take 4 or 5 and he goes, This is as good as it's going to get. And then you do get into posts and there's like one phrase that you actually didn't get it. I'm like, that is the perfect place to use a clone, Brandon. But I'm being genuine. Like, let's say there was just like, I'm looking at the next line in my script. Now let's look at the top spenders driving momentum in September. Like, let's say you just, now let's look at the top spenders driving momentum in September. And it's like a flub, and you didn't notice that it was a flub.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You get like, that would be a great application. See. You get what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
I think that we do have that ability in one of the programs we use to assemble our ad reads. It's called the script.
Yes.
And I think we have that ability in there. I just don't know that it's something we've ever bothered to figure out or if we're even allowed to do it, honestly. But that is interesting. And I know that I have heard of people doing that. I don't think I've ever done it myself, but I've definitely heard of people making quick fixes like that where you can just you're talking about you can like replace a word or a couple words or something like that.
Yeah, or like an advertiser like Quince that we have at Oxford Road, like folks will say Quince. Like they just don't, or Boland Branch, an advertiser, people will Boland Branch. Like, so it's like, oh, you want it to be Boland Branch, it's like little things like that. It's like photoshopping a cold sore off of somebody's lip, sonically. So,
totally.
Okay. All right. Let's get back to business. So
one more thing. It's like that music discussion we were just having where it's like, our singer hit a bad note, but we can correct it a little bit with pitch correction.
Yes, exactly. It doesn't mean we have to use pitch correction all the time, but if you are going to use it all the time, do it like T-Pain. Okay.
Exactly.
All right, so now let's listen to the top or movers and shakers from September. This is according to Magellan AI, and you can get a free demo of Magellan at magellan.ai/ad infinitum. Brandon, are you ready to grade some ads?
Let's do it.
All right, first one is Park Whiz on Unafraid Show with George Wrightster from September 23rd. Here we go.
Parking shouldn't slow you down. ParkWiz gives every driver a shortcut. Book ahead, save up to 50%, and skip the hassle of circling the block. Park smarter, park faster. ParkWiz. Download the ParkWiz app today and save every time you park.
All right, Brandon, short and sweet and hard to beat. Let's get this party started. What do you rate that ad for persuasiveness and why?
Well, I would rate it a 8.7 out of 10. I think it's very persuasive. It makes me want to at least look into what it is. And I think I understand the gist of what they are trying to persuade us to do and communicate. And 8.7.
8.7. Okay. All right. Yeah. And it had that funky music track.
I do like the music. That's a good point.
And that always, that can help make us feel better. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold back on the Audiolytics scores until we get all the way through. I've been doing that recently because I want to get your unadulterated grade. So let's go to Google. I actually think this is for YouTube, which is owned by Google. Everybody, spoiler alert.
Sweet.
All right. So this next one is from Google. Here we go.
As a scientist, I can tell you that Sundays are only 24 hours long. But with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get every game every Sunday all in one place. That's upwards of 30 hours of NFL in one day. How can there be 30 hours in 24 hours, you ask? I have a theory. Magic. New users get NFL Sunday Ticket for 8 payments of $34.50 per month. Sign up at NFLSundayTicket.com. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games and commercial use. Terms and embargoes apply. Availability varies.
Okay, Brandon, before you give your grade on that one, I want to start.
You go ahead.
Mike Cesario of Liquid Death has remarked about their advertising that he didn't set out to be advertising awesome, but awesome, or it's something like that. Or it's like he didn't set out to be like advertising funny, but like funny.
Yeah.
Like actually like SNL level, when SNL is good or when South Park is good, like funny, like legitimately awesome. This line that, how can there be 30 hours and 24 hours, you ask? I have a theory. Magic. That to me is like advertising funny or advertising in it. Like, what? Like, I've been in the rooms, I've put stuff out there like this, but it's like, come on, guys, you can do better than that. You know what I mean? Like, it's like nobody would, to me, it like erodes the credibility. But now that I've said thrown my little stone at it, what is your unbiased grade of this ad for persuasiveness?
Well, this one, I really like their use of sound and kind of ambiance. And, like they had the ding, the bell in there. I think it definitely, I'm not necessarily a football guy. I watch sometimes, but it makes me interested slightly more than I think it normally would. And so I think that it definitely, considering like the kind of ambiance music and the sound that it provides, it catches my attention. It does what it's supposed to set out to do as far as, letting me know that this is available. So I think I'd give it a 9.3.
Wow, dude, what a generous man. Okay. Wow.
I liked it. It wasn't bad.
All right. This is interesting. Let's keep going. Okay. All right. This next one is from Wells Fargo. Here we go.
The name of this product is the Active Cash Credit Card from Wells Fargo. That's a lot of name, but it's also a lot of card. It earns unlimited 2% cash rewards on purchases. Whether it's buying tickets to the game with your mom or grabbing a coffee with your dog, purchases big and small earn unlimited 2% cash rewards. No limits, no categories to track, just straightforward rewards that keep adding up. So, you might stumble a bit while saying it, but paying with it will make you stumble upon so much more. Shopping, dining, cooking, gardening, you get the idea. Let's say it together. The Active Cash Credit Card from Wells Fargo earns unlimited 2% cash rewards on purchases. You know what? It does have a ring to it. No, seriously, try saying it out loud. The Active Cash Credit Card from Wells Fargo. Oh, that sounds nice. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/active cash. Terms apply.
Okay.
Wells Fargo.
What say you, Brandon?
Okay, so I think that one doesn't quite, he's got a good read. It definitely tells me what I need to know. I bank with Wells Fargo. So, definitely listening with great interest on that one. But I think that there could be, like I said, I like, the use of other sounds to kind of illustrate, what they're trying to communicate. And so I think that there's some opportunities, I feel like, for some like sound design type things in there. The fact that it doesn't have music or anything doesn't necessarily bother me, but I feel like there could be some more use of sound design, sound effects to help kind of communicate what they're trying to advertise there. So I think I'm going to give it an 8.4. Yeah.
Okay. It's coming in third place. I thought something cool he did that's in the land of like leaning into the medium, like sound effects would be, where he goes, no, seriously, try saying it out loud. The Active Cash Credit Card. Mm-hmm. I thought that was kind of cool. Like, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, that's an interesting in the listening medium to go.
True. Yeah.
To call, so it was like there was an attempt there. So that one's in third place. Let's see if the last one comes in fourth place or maybe replaces one of these other ones on the podium. So here we go. This is from LG Electronics.
Having a great day.
Yeah.
Hope you're enjoying some tacos on this Tuesday.
I did, in fact.
Hope you enjoyed your Monday Night Foosball the way the Lions did yesterday. Right now, Covino and Rich are live from the Fox Sports Radio studio, and the LG X Boom Grab is the portable speaker that powers your hustle from morning coffee runs to midnight rooftop hangs. Enjoy vibrant sound with up to 20 hours of playback. That's a party, man.
Yeah,
20-hour party. And now save 25% at LG.com with code FALL25, FALL25. So bring the boom, X Boom.
LG.
And have a great fall like Humpty Dumpty.
Life's good. I hope you do have a Humpty Dumpty type of fall. I'm wearing a flannel shirt, apple picking, having a latte.
He's really living it up.
Yeah. Man, have a great fall, Humpty Dumpty.
All right. They, I think I remember Humpty Dumpty better than I remember LGX Boom. What do you give that one stacked up against the others?
Let's see. I like the kind of more conversational nature of it. I think that's, cool. It's probably very fitting for the show. But I think you also made a point, that you remember what was it, the bada bing?
Yeah, the boom. Oh, no,
Humpty
Dumpty. Yes, Humpty Dumpty.
You remember Humpty Dumpty better than actually LG. So considering that, I think I'd probably give it an 8 on the dot.
Okay, 8 on the dot. So it comes in last place. All right, drum roll, please.
Yeah.
So first of all, Brandon, your scores. Number 1 is Google or the NFL ticket at 9.3 out of 10. Then we've got ParkWiz at 8.7 out of 10, Wells Fargo at 8.4 out of 10, and LGX Boom at 8 out of 10. You kept them all up there in the 8s and the 9s, which is very generous of you. Audiolytics agrees on your first two as far as rank order goes. So Google got an 86%. It was Our target is 90, which your Ollie ad beat that, the YouTube ad. Wells Fargo got an 84, and then Audiolytics has these tied at the bottom. and a 70% on ParkWiz and LGX Boom. And it's interesting to me, both of those.
Oh, wow.
Both of those are shorter, which is often the case of you're just not as able to get as much substance in there. And, the thing that I noticed with these is it does sound like you said, these two from the Dan Patrick Show, LGX Boom had the nice conversational nature to it, but they didn't self-identify like producer Brandon does. Producer Brandon always self-identifies. Also with the Wells Fargo ad, that was obviously being read by like a producer or talent,
Right.
But he didn't self-identify. And even in the stories that he told, like you and Ollie, you took the story, you made it personal, your dogs, like grabbing, a game with your mom or grabbing a coffee with your dog. That's from the Wells Fargo script. It's like that individual could have personalized that more. Like when I take my mom to a game or grab coffee with your dog, I don't know who grabs coffee with their dog, but he grabs coffee with his dog. He could personalize it more, which is something that you did well. And then I think, with ParkWiz, though, you gave it a higher score. I want to dig into that one. Like, what did Audiolytics say about that? Why did it?
What was Audiolytics score of that one again?
70%. So it's saying
I didn't give it color.
Provide data research to substantiate the gap between the current offering and the status quo, create an event or deadline to justify urgency of action, include a unique discount. So that's sort of some basic like rules of the road that you can do to pump up the persuasiveness.
Gotcha.
I think also it lacks some specificity. Parking shouldn't slow you down. ParkWiz gives every driver a shortcut, book ahead, save up to 50%. You got to think that this is a geo-targeted one, because it's not going to necessarily apply to everybody. I'm not sure. Download the ParkWiz app today and save every time you park.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
But I will say on the top ranked ads here for both Audiolytics and for producer Brandon, you've got a lot of good information. It explains exactly what it is and how to transact. And, paints more of a picture in the listener's mind. After listening to these ads, what recommendations do you have for the chief audio officers that are listening?
Yeah, I think that, one thing I really try to do, and I guess I struggled to say this as good as I'm about to now earlier, but just really try to make a connection with the listener. And that delves into the authenticity, the honesty of the ad, really trying to make an impression. And I feel like the best way to do that is to just kind of, make it as much you as you can, as much of your authentic self as you can. That's what I'm trying to say. And so it goes back to what I was saying about like kind of the best way that resonates with a lot of people is talking to them like you would talk to your friends. Tell them, if you were telling your friends about this product, this thing, how would you say it? And, I think that really kind of resonates with people. As far as, other ways to kind of do it, I know that we don't do this for Morning Wire, but I saw kind of just a really innovative way to kind of not necessarily do an ad, but to advertise something. I think on the Ben Shapiro show, they use Perplexity, not necessarily always in an ad, but it's like, actually, let's check this fact with Perplexity, which is, the AI kind of chat GPT competitor. And I think that that's a really cool way to do that. So there's a lot of ways that you can innovate as far as advertising, I feel. And I feel like, those are two ways right there. One where you really kind of connect with your audience, just like you would, your friends, and also find a way to work something in the way that Ben showed us.
Yeah, I think I've heard that on Rogan recently as well, that they're using Perplexity. Nice. So kudos to the Perplexity team. Aristotle figured it out a long time ago, as he did many things. He said a person is not fully persuaded until they consider a thing demonstrated, right? And I think that's a part of what I'm hearing come out of this as well, right? Like,
absolutely.
When you're honest and authentic about your experience with the product, you're demonstrating it in a way. And then if you think about it, the other choice that these advertisers took, and you take as well, you're able to do both with your reads, is they're using the medium itself, like sound effects and music, to communicate as well. So, either do, or if you can do both, use a real, honest human telling the truth about their experience with the product. And then also use the tools that are at your disposal to paint a picture in the theater of the mind. And all of that works together to demonstrate the product in a non-visual medium to the listener.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I love what you said about demonstrating, because in a way you are kind of like painting a picture of a demonstration for folks in a way that they can relate to. And I think that really speaks volumes when you can do that, and it really draws people in.
Yeah, like I said, it's sometimes I'm like Aristotle, this rhetoric or whatever. It's like he figured all this stuff out, and then we just we keep repackaging it.
Right.
So it's like, let's just go back to the source So, Brandon, thank you so much for coming on Ad Infinitum. And also, thank you very much for taking your craft seriously and putting great work out there. It is so easy in audio to phone it in. It really is.
Definitely.
I think that even is inherent to the power of audio, because audio is, it's our sense that is always on. It supersedes all other senses. It's directly linked to the creation of memory and emotion. It's our quickest sense, right? If you touch your own arm, your feeling of that touch is slower than if you heard a sound. Right. So sound, that's why they use a starting gun in the Olympics. So I say all this to say, because it is so powerful, one cannot try very hard and still get all that power. But man, it's so much more powerful when someone does try hard and get all of that power. And that's what you're doing with your work on the Morning Wire. So thank you for respecting the craft and putting great work out there. And thanks again so much for joining Ad Infinitum.
Of course, love doing it. And thank you so much for having me. Reminder, Morning Wire on video now. Check us out. We are rated very neutral on Ad Fontes. So please watch our show. Thanks a lot, Stu.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, video's the new audio. Okay, that's a wrap on another episode of Ad Infinitum. For you chief audio officers listening, remember, authenticity isn't about sounding perfect. It's about sounding honest. The real voice that converts is the one that connects and cuts through. Remember to go to Magellan.ai/ad infinitum to sign up for a free demo. And thank you for listening, and have fun making the ads work.